His boot struck bone. He staggered back. A woman's face stared up from the dirt, eyes wide, lips cracked, skin scorched by the sun. Still alive, still breathing. He dropped to his knees, clawing at the earth, but her gaze snapped past him. She was mouthing something. He turned. On the ridge, figures on horseback, feathers, spears, painted chests. No warning, no time. Just the sharp crack of a signal call and the rising dust of a charge. He looked down. She wasn't begging to be saved. She was warning him. Something far worse was coming, and he'd already stepped into the trap. His hands hit dry earth, scraping knuckles raw as he dug around her neck. Each second burned. Arrows whistled overhead. One slammed into the dust beside her cheek. Her eyes never blinked. He grunted. Rock-hard soil cracked as he wedged beneath her shoulders, twisting until her collarbones tore free of the packed crust. She gasped. A thin, rattling breath. Blood crusted her lips. He didn't wait. He heaved her over his shoulder, legs dangling, her hair tangled with grit and ash. He ran. The brush tore at his coat. Behind him, cries rose. Apache riders, close! The mare waited in the scrub, nostrils flaring. He swung her on first, then mounted behind, kicking hard. The horse lunged forward, hooves slamming against packed clay. The woman slumped in front of him, dead weight. He held her steady with one arm, rifle in the other. Dust kicked high behind them. War cries cracked the horizon. A sharp pain. Something grazed his arm. He didn't look. He didn't slow. The desert unfolded in sharp cuts. Dry washes, thorn-choked gullies, sandstone teeth rising from the ground. He veered into a gulch, the walls tightening like a throat. Shade pressed in. The echo of hooves bounced between stone. No wind, just the rush of breath and the pounding of pursuit. She stirred. Her voice, low and slurred, muttered in Apache, words he didn't know. Maybe prayer. Maybe curse. He glanced down. Her eyes fluttered. Blood soaked her shirt. His gut twisted. Leave her and live, or keep riding and die with her. He didn't let go. Another arrow zipped past. Then another. The walls of the gulch opened briefly to a sunlit basin, broken stumps and red dust swirling. A hawk circled once, high and silent. He spotted it. A rockfall, half covered by dry brush. Beneath it, the faint hollow of shadow. His legs pulled the reins hard. The mare fought, skidded, nearly buckled. He leapt off, pulled her with him, dragging the woman over one shoulder, pushing the brush aside with the rifle stock. A narrow crack yawned before him. Black, cool. A scent of damp earth and something long dead. He shoved them both in. Dark swallowed them. The moment he cleared the entrance, he dropped her gently against the stone wall and wheeled to drag brush back over the mouth. Outside, hooves thundered past. Shouts. Silence. He didn't breathe. Not yet. The cave pressed in. A mine shaft, maybe, old, forgotten. Wooden braces groaned. Above him. The air was thick, metallic, with the scent of bats and sulfur. The woman coughed once. Her body jerked, then stilled. He knelt beside her, fumbled in his coat, struck a match. A single flame danced against the wall, revealing rusted rails beneath their feet and carvings in the stone that didn't look like English. He listened. No sound, no pursuit, just echoes. And in those echoes, something moved deeper in the mine. Something alive. The match flickered, then died. He struck another. The flame hissed in the dry stillness. With shaking fingers, he lit the scrap of cloth wrapped around a stick. The light bloomed across stone ribs, flickering against splintered beams overhead. Shadows crawled like insects on the walls. The mine breathed. He knelt beside her. Her skin was slick with sweat and dust, cracked where the sun had taken too much. Her shoulder bled steady from the arrow graze. He tore his sleeve and wrapped it tight. She stirred, not fully awake, not gone either. Her mouth moved. He leaned close. Her breath was warm, sour with blood. Apache words slipped from her lips, slow and soft, as if spoken through water. He didn't know the meaning, just the weight. He pulled a canteen from his saddlebag, tilted it to her mouth. She swallowed once. Then her hand snapped up and grabbed his wrist. Eyes open now, not wild, not grateful, just still. She stared at him. He waited. Her voice came rough, from somewhere deep. One word. Dry. Final. Thief. He sat back hard. The word cracked like a whip. She turned her face away from the firelight. Her chest rose and fell shallow, but her eyes stayed open. Watching the dark, he didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, he stood and moved to the far side of the shaft, tossed more dry brush onto the flame. The light caught the edge of his saddlebag. Something inside shifted loose. He reached in. From the bottom, wrapped in an old kerchief, he pulled it free. A tarnished cavalry badge, bent at one edge. He turned it in his hand. It gleamed like a wound. He stared a long time, then tucked it away again. The silence inside the mine grew heavier. Wood creaked. Something dripped slow against stone. From deeper down, wind moved across old tunnels, thin as breath. Behind him, she tried to sit, failed, fell back. He didn't help. She whispered something else. He didn't ask what it meant. Outside, the quiet snapped. A hoof cracked against rock. He killed the fire with his boot. Sparks scattered, then died. He dropped flat against the stone. She stayed where she was, eyes wide, body tense. More hooves, slow, measured. Close now. A voice called out in Apache. Another answered. He counted 3, maybe 4. Then silence. He reached for his rifle. She watched him, not with fear, with judgment. Dust shifted near the entrance. Pebbles fell. The riders had dismounted. He crawled to the opening, eased his eye to the thin cracks in the brush. Nothing. Just heat rising off stone. No movement. Then the shadow of a man passed, across the gap, close enough to hear him breathe. The cowboy's hand gripped the rifle stock tighter, muscles taut, jaw clenched. Beside him, the woman whispered one more word. Not loud. This time he understood it. Blood. They rode at dawn. The mine was empty behind them. No hoof prints in the dust. No sound but the wind whispering low across the stone. He held her steady in the saddle. Her voice, faint but certain, guided him deeper into the desert. Not north, not west, southward into country that pulled tight across the chest. The sun climbed fast. Heat shimmered on the horizon. Dry air clung to the lungs. They passed through a line of mesquite trees. Each one bore marks, notches carved into bark. Broken arrows hung from twine. Some snapped clean. Others split down the shaft. Ritual markers. He didn't ask. She didn't explain. Ravens watched from the rocks above. Still. Silent. Their eyes black as obsidian, following each step as though weighing it. The path narrowed. Cacti stood like sentinels. Stone outcrops rose on both sides. The land felt hollowed, like a place where voices went to vanish. He felt it behind his ribs. Not fear. Not yet. But something colder. She stirred in the saddle. Her hand rose, slow and weak, pointing toward a cluster of sun-bleached stones. He turned the mare. The landscape shifted. Soil grew pale and packed, cracked in long ribs. Bones littered the ground, some animal, some not. Her head leaned against his chest. The wind carried dust. A vision pushed in behind his eyes. Flames, chanting. Her body wrapped in white buckskin, laid on the earth beside other figures. Men circled, faces painted in ash and red. One of them stepped forward, hands trembling. A blade lifted. The crowd stilled. Then, instead of cutting her bonds, he drove the blade into the earth beside her head. Left her there. Walked away. She had seen it too. Her lips moved but gave no sound. He shook it off. They kept moving. The trail bent hard along a ridge of redstone. Below, the valley opened wide and barren. Heat rose in waves. Ravens circled above again. Their wings did not flap. The mare snorted. Ears pinned. She halted. He scanned ahead. Nothing moved. Then he saw it. A figure, face down in the dirt, skin painted in ochre and ash, back torn open, feathers braided through long black hair. The blood was still wet. He dismounted, lowered the woman carefully. Her eyes were open now, alert. He stepped toward the body. Dust shifted beneath his boots. Flies buzzed low. The corpse had no weapon, no boots, only paint and ritual cord around his wrists. Across his back, carved in bruises, was a symbol, a badge. His badge. He knelt, touched the edge of the paint, still warm. Behind him, the woman had pulled herself upright. Her hand covered her mouth, her eyes full of knowing. He rose slow. The canyon walls seemed closer now, the sun higher. The air stilled. They weren't alone, not anymore. The canyon swallowed them. Stone rose on both sides like the ribs of a buried beast. Narrow walls, sharp with old scars. Sunlight broke in strips, thin and slanted, casting long shadows across their path. The wind came low and steady, but inside the canyon it whispered. It did not sound like wind. He kept one hand on the reins, the other on his rifle. Each hoofbeat echoed strange and slow, stretched by the tight walls. The mare moved cautious beneath him. The woman rode in front, her back straight, her eyes fixed forward. No one spoke. He wanted to turn back, wanted to ride hard and fast until the red rock and bad ground fell behind. He could have left her there in the dust, could have walked away when he first saw her eyes above the sand. Why didn't he? He watched the shadows crawl across the stone. They shifted with no sun to move them, darting shapes, half-formed, gone before the eye could settle. He blinked. Then she spoke. Her voice was thin, not weak, not frightened, just tired. They were not killed by soldiers. He turned his head, not fully hearing. My clan. Not soldiers. Her jaw tightened. She did not look at him. He frowned. Then who? She did not answer. Instead, she nodded toward the wall. Painted there in faded ochre, half hidden by moss and dust, was a handprint. Beneath it, a smaller one. Her people had passed through here. The wind picked up again. This time it carried something colder. He thought of his badge. Thought of the man painted in ochre, lying face down in blood. Thought of the woman beside him, alive because he made the wrong choice, or the right one. His stomach twisted. She finally turned to him. Her eyes were steady. Someone wants it to look like your kind did it. It landed heavy. He looked ahead. The canyon grew tighter, a curve just beyond reach. The walls too high now, no sky above, just rock and dust and whispers. He pulled the rifle from its sling. The mare's ears twitched, her hooves faltered. They rounded the bend. A figure sat still at the exit, horse and rider, covered in dust, face hidden beneath cloth, a wide-brimmed hat low over his eyes, rifle resting across the saddle horn. Not Apache, not Bluecoat, still, waiting. The woman drew a breath through her teeth. The rider raised one hand, not in greeting, warning. Behind them, the canyon groaned. Stone cracked, loose rock tumbled from above. The trap was set, and the only way out was through. The masked rider never moved. Before the cowboy could lift his rifle, the shot rang out. The mare screamed and dropped. Dust erupted. He hit the ground hard, shoulder first, pain biting deep. The woman tumbled beside him. She tried to crawl, but another shot kicked up dirt near her hand. Voices barked from the ridge above. 4 men stepped into view. Dirty coats, cracked boots, faces hidden behind cloth and grime. Not soldiers, not tribe, scavengers. The kind who fed on death and drought. They came fast, rifles raised. The cowboy reached for his sidearm. A boot slammed into his ribs, breath gone. They dragged him up by the collar, slammed him against stone. Rough hands emptied his coat, took the rifle, took the pack. The woman was on her knees, hair falling over her face. One of the men stepped back from her, spitting hard. She lives. Another stared at her, as if he'd seen a ghost. Buried she was. I remember a third stepped forward and grabbed her chin, turned her face to the light. His hand trembled. They looked at one another. She spoke. Just one word. Quiet. The men backed off, cursed that word passed between them like heat through metal. The first one, tall and scarred, crossed himself. They left her in the earth. Alive. For speaking names in her sleep, the cowboy groaned, half standing now. One of them turned and cracked him across the face with a rifle butt. Blood filled his mouth. "You ride with her?" the cowboy spat. The leader yanked the saddlebag open, poured its contents in the dust. Canteen, tin, rope, then the badge. It hit the ground with a dull clink. The air shifted. The youngest of them, a sunburned man with black teeth, stepped forward, stared long and hard. His voice dropped low. "I know that mark." His eyes narrowed. "Company C Sand Hollow." "My brother died there." The cowboy didn't speak. Couldn't. The man picked up the badge, turned it over in his hand, then looked at the cowboy like he was already dead. They tied them both with rough hemp and dragged them to a dead tree beyond the canyon's mouth. Flies buzzed thick around the branches. Old bones lay scattered in the brush. An execution place. The woman sat still. No fear in her face. No hate. Only watching. The cowboy's wrists bled against the rope. The leader spoke. "Dawn comes. Then we burn the curse from both of you." The fire pit was built by dusk. The cowboy's head dropped. She leaned toward him, whispered something he did not hear. Her voice rose again. This time, he caught it. "A white man rides through fire to save the ones who bury him." The bandits drank and laughed near the flames. Behind them, in the dark, something shifted in the brush. Not animal, not wind. It watched, waiting. The stakes were already planted, thick timber driven deep into the dry earth, roped and blackened from past fires. The smell of scorched hair clung to the dust. Above them, the stars stared down, cold and white against the canyon's jagged rim. The cowboy's arms were stretched behind him, wrists bound, rough to splintered wood. The woman beside him sat still, tied in silence, her eyes on the coals the bandits had begun to pile beneath their feet. The men drank in a loose circle. Shadows danced across their faces. Laughter cut short and sharp, followed by long stretches of quiet. One poured whiskey in the fire pit. Another lit a match and watched it burn too close to his fingers before dropping it. Flames caught slow. Low orange flickers licked the wood. The cowboy pulled at the rope. Skin tore. No give. Across the fire, her voice came soft. He turned his head. Her face was calm. Smoke coiled between them. "A white man rides through fire to save the ones who bury him." She did not blink. He stared at her. The words clawed into his chest. He looked past her, to where one barrel sat half buried behind a pile of broken crates. The smell had been faint but steady since dusk. Strong liquor, whiskey, maybe stronger. The fire climbed higher. Ash rose. One of the men stepped close, tossed a dry root onto the pile beneath them. He stared at the woman a moment too long, then turned away, laughing to himself. The cowboy shifted, saw it, a jagged piece of wood near his feet, almost buried in dust. He reached with one foot, slow, pinned it against his boot heel, drew it up and pressed it to the post, worked the edge. The rope frayed. The woman closed her eyes. He heard her voice again, but it came from inside now, like breath in his ribs. His hand came loose. Just one. The fire cracked louder. The men were distracted, one fighting with another over the last swig from the bottle. He moved quick, snatched the shard of wood, dug at the knot on his other wrist. Blood spilled. Rope loosened. He dropped low and rolled fast, kicked dirt onto the fire to blind it. Sparks flew. They shouted. He grabbed the burning root, ran to the barrel, jammed the flame into the crack between wood and cork, backpedaled. The blast hit hard. A roar. Light like sun. Heat rushed out like a breath from hell. Men screamed. Some caught fire where they stood. Others were thrown back into rock and silence. The sky blinked red. then black. The cowboy felt his knees hit earth, then nothing. Smoke curled around the scorched posts. The fire swallowed everything. Somewhere beneath the flames, the woman still sat, still breathing. The wind stirred the ashes. Gray flakes floated in lazy spirals above the blackened earth. Smoke hung low, clinging to the skin, bitter and still warm. No voices, no movement, just scorched ground and silence. He opened his eyes slow. The sky above was pale. Morning had not yet taken full shape. He shifted, and pain bloomed sharp across his ribs. His shirt was torn, hands blistered. The stake behind him burned down to a glowing stump. He sat up. Across from him, she was already awake. Her arms were streaked with soot. A cut ran along her jaw, thin but deep. Her eyes met his without fear. They did not speak for a while. The dead were scattered. Charred wood, twisted shapes in the dust. Smoke drifted from the shattered barrel. Flies gathered where the heat began to fade. He stood slow. She reached toward the rope at her ankles. He crossed to her, knelt, and freed the last knot. Her wrists were raw. He poured a trickle of water over them. She did not flinch. They sat beside the dying fire. He stared into the coals. Something inside cracked. He saw fire again, but not here. Not desert. Pine forest. Cold ground. Shouts in the dark. The village lit by torchlight. Children dragged from hides. A woman struck down holding nothing but a bowl, smoke curling from the roof beams. His regiment had said it was necessary, that Apache did not understand surrender. He had watched, had ridden on. That night, he buried his badge in a riverbank and walked west. The silence broke. She spoke, quiet. One word, her name. Not the one the soldiers might have recorded. Not the one whispered in fear by scavengers. This was something older. It settled in the air like dust. He nodded, told her his truth in return. Not war, not duty. Exile. She looked at him, not with pity, with knowing. The fire crackled. A breeze pulled across the clearing. The wind shifted. Her eyes narrowed. She turned her head, listened. The wind carried something faint. A soft drum of hooves, the rhythm of riders not in haste, not chasing, coming with purpose. Her lips parted. She rose to her feet slow, steady despite the wound. They were close now. Her clan. She did not look afraid. He stood beside her. Dust clung to both of them. Blood dried on their arms. They waited. The canyon breathed again. The sound of riders grew louder, still unseen but coming. He did not move. Neither did she. Not yet. The hoofbeats slowed at the ridge. Dust rose behind the riders in a long ribbon. Shapes formed through the morning glare. 8 of them. Maybe 9. Painted faces. Bows across their backs. Eyes sharp beneath wide foreheads weathered by sun and years. They did not ride fast. They rode certain. She stood still. The cowboy stepped back, 1 pace, letting her move ahead. Her legs were steady. Her wound had stopped bleeding but not hurting. She did not show it. The riders stopped 20 paces out, no words. Bows lifted. The tips of the arrows caught light. Feathers trembled in the breeze. No voices, just the groan of leather and creak of limbs drawn taut. She raised 1 arm, not in surrender. In defiance, they held. She walked forward, slow. Dust curled around her bare feet. The men on horseback watched her come. The oldest among them narrowed his eyes. Scars crossed his cheek in 3 straight lines, a mark of exile, a mark of judgment. He dismounted, stepped forward. The others stayed mounted. Arrows aimed at the cowboy. The elder met her in the center of the clearing. He looked at her like looking into flame, not blinking. She did not lower her gaze. "You live," she nodded. His eyes shifted to the cowboy, held there, then back to her. "You walk with him again," she nodded. The boughs behind them tightened. The elder stepped closer. "You were buried for speaking too much?" Her voice was steady. "I was buried because your brother feared truth." The elder stiffened. Behind him, one rider flinched. A younger man, broad shoulders, no paint on his chest. She turned toward him. He would visit campfires at night. Leave before dawn. Come back with coin. The elder's face darkened. He fed names to white thieves. Said it would protect the rest. Of us. Said it would keep the soldiers away. Her voice cracked. It brought fire instead. The younger man shifted in his saddle, reins twisting in his hand. He did not meet her eyes. The elder turned to look at him, then back to her. Why speak now? She turned slowly. Her eyes passed over each face. Because truth buried me once, she stopped and looked at the cowboy, and he dug me out. The bows lowered. Not all, but most. The younger man dropped his head. The elder did not speak. Silence pressed in like weight. She stepped toward the younger rider. He looked up, shame rising in his throat like heat. Her hand drifted to her waist. She carried no weapon. He reached for his blade. She met his eyes and stopped. Her hand fell to her side. She turned away, the decision made, not yet spoken. Forgiveness or fire? No one moved. Not yet. Part 10. She stepped back from the younger man. He had not moved marvelous, blade still sheathed, his eyes low. The fire of vengeance in him had gone out. Not burned away, just cooled beneath the weight of too many watching eyes. The others watched her now, still mounted, still ready. She turned and walked to the open earth between them, the place where no one stood, where blood had not yet touched. She crouched. With the edge of her hand, she began to draw. The circle formed slow, careful. One motion, no breaks, no rush. Dust curled around her fingers, a perfect ring in the dry soil. Same shape, same size as the one that once held her throat deep beneath the sun. The burial ring. A prison, meant to end breath. Now redrawn by her own hand. When she stood, her palm was stained pale. They said nothing. She turned to the cowboy. He did not step forward yet. She looked at him and nodded once. He understood. He walked out into the silence. The men on horseback shifted. A few raised bows again. He did not stop. When he reached the circle, he paused, then pulled something from his pocket. The badge. It caught the morning light for only a second. He knelt and placed it in the center of the ring. A mark of what he had been. Of what had brought ruin and fire to people he had never known. Of what he had buried long ago and carried still. He stood and stepped back. The wind brushed across them, soft, dry. She looked at the circle, then at her people. This is the truth her voice carried, even and quiet. He rides with the memory of fire. I ride with the weight of earth. Neither one of us asked for it. But we lived, and we chose. She looked at the younger man again. We are not who we were, but we are still here. The elder dismounted. He walked to the edge of the circle, looked down at the badge, then looked up at the cowboy. No rage in his face, no peace either, only the weight of long memory. He pointed to the ridge. You ride that way. The meaning was clear. Leave, now, or not at all. The cowboy did not argue. He looked once more at the woman. She gave no smile, no farewell, just eyes that no longer judged, no longer feared. He turned, walked slow to his horse, mounted. The circle remained behind him, a badge in its center, a truth laid bare. Dust kicked up as he rode, not fast, not fleeing, just forward. The woman watched. No one else spoke. The wind erased part of the ring, but not all. The sun broke slow across the desert rim, a soft light, thin and golden. It touched the stones first, then the thorn brush, then the black earth where fire had passed, and memory still lingered. He rode east. No sound but the steady rhythm of hooves on hard ground. The mare's breath even? The saddle creaked once as he shifted, back stiff from wounds half healed. His hands rested loose on the reins. The weight he carried now was not in his pack. Behind him, no dust rose, no pursuit. The ridge faded into the horizon. Shadows pulled long across the basin. Ravens circled once and vanished into light. She stood at the edge of the basin, feet planted, shoulders square, alone. No rope bound her. No voice silenced her. The circle in the dust still marked the ground beside her, thin now, fading at the edges. The wind had begun its slow work. She did not watch him right away. She turned toward the hills that once cast her out, toward stone shelters and trails known only to her people, toward names that had forgotten her, toward land that might, in time, remember. She walked, each step silent, certain. The morning light brushed her face. A small line of blood still marked her jaw. She did not wipe it away. She passed the place where his badge lay, did not look down. The circle breathed its last shape. He rode until she was no longer a figure in the distance. The land stretched wide ahead. There were no roads, no town to find, no man waiting to greet him. Just open ground and the silence of choices made without glory. He did not think of forgiveness, not from her, not from the dead, only of the way the fire had looked in her eyes and how it did not burn him. Behind him, the dust swirled and rose, light as smoke. The circle faded, first the edges, then the center. The wind swept through and took the last of it. Only the memory remained. He kept riding. The desert did not speak. It never had. But it had listened. And somewhere between the silence and the rising sun, a truth had been buried deeper than any grave. A man does not erase what he was, but he can choose what he leaves behind. Some debts are never repaid, but a man can still ride on with his hands empty and his head unturned. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and comment on the Old Western Tales. The Old Western Tales. The Old Western Tales. The Old Western Tales.